The grand hall of the Galactic Council shimmered under the blue light of 1,000 stars projected through its crystal dome, the air humming with tension and arrogance. Delegates from 100 worlds filled the seats, their forms glistening, scaled, feathered, and luminous, each one cloaked in the pride of their species. They had gathered to witness the first human diplomatic appearance since Earth joined the outer systems, a moment the galaxy called historic but treated as a joke. Whispers passed like wind through the hall as the humans entered. 6 guards and 1 ambassador, all dressed in plain dark uniforms. No armor, no drones, no glowing weapons or exosuits like the other species carried. The alien generals exchanged looks of disbelief. "Are they serious?" muttered a Kethian officer whose 4 eyes blinked in amusement. "They walk into a council chamber unarmed." "Primitive habit," hissed a Skavari delegate, her voice sharp like glass. "Perhaps they think muscle will protect them in a room of plasma cannons." The laughter spread quickly, rippling through the tiers of seats like a wave. Even the council's security monitors flickered as their sensors scanned the humans repeatedly, confirming the same result. No visible weaponry, no energy field, no combat implants. The humans stood silently at the foot of the council floor, unmoving, calm, hands behind their backs. The ambassador, Commander Allen, waited as his guards positioned themselves behind him. Every alien expected nervousness, arrogance, or pride. What they saw instead was discipline, stillness, eyes that did not flicker, not even when mocked. That stillness unnerved some of the younger delegates, though they didn't know why. One of the alien commanders leaned toward his neighbor and chuckled. "They send warriors without weapons. How do they expect to protect anyone?" Another laughed louder. "Maybe they hope to bore us to death." A roar of laughter filled the chamber, echoed by the metallic scraping of armor as guards from other races pounded their spears and rifles in amusement. The human guards didn't react. Their faces remained steady, calm like stone. One alien finally called out across the chamber, voice dripping with mockery, "Are you here to talk, or to die unarmed?" The hall erupted again, but before the laughter faded, Commander Allen turned his head slightly, eyes cold but not angry. "We don't need weapons," he said softly. The sound was quiet, but the words carried through the hall like a whisper of thunder. The laughter slowed, unease creeping through the air. There was something in his tone, something too steady, too knowing. The council leader, a massive being of gold and ivory feathers named High Speaker Varin, raised a clawed hand to silence the crowd. "Let them speak," he said, though amusement still danced in his glowing eyes. "Perhaps we can learn what makes the humans so bold." The delegates quieted, still smirking, as the human ambassador stepped forward. "We are honored to be here," Allen said. His voice was calm, even warm. "We come as equals, not as threats. Our guards are not a show of strength but of respect. We bring no weapons because we trust this council's peace." "Or perhaps," murmured a Kren delegate with a sneer, "because you have none worth showing." A few laughs followed, low and sharp. Allen smiled faintly. "You're right. We don't have what you have, plasma blades, gravity hammers, psionic shields. We've learned to fight differently." "Differently?" mocked a general from the Zol Dominion. "Do you throw stones?" "Sometimes," Allen replied quietly, "when the stones are all we have." A strange silence fell. The alien's smirk faltered. He didn't know why, but those simple words felt heavy. Something about the human's calm tone, about the guards standing motionless behind him, gave the impression that they weren't defenseless. They were simply waiting. The High Speaker tilted his head. "You claim to trust this council's peace, yet you bring guards. If you do not fear harm, why have them at all?" Allen turned slightly toward his guards, who stood like statues, eyes alert but unblinking. "Because peace doesn't last without those willing to protect it," he said softly. "We don't fear violence. We remember it." A murmur spread among the delegates. Some whispered that it was arrogance. Others said it was madness. A few, however, felt something colder, a strange sense that these humans spoke from experience, not pride. The council leader smiled, trying to regain control of the tone. "Well said, Commander. But tell me, Why no visible weapons? Surely a show of readiness would be more diplomatic. Alan's gaze was steady. Because when humans carry weapons, he said, someone always tests them. When we don't, people make the same mistake you're making now. The hall quieted further. That was when the first tremor hit. A low vibration shivered through the floor, faint but unmistakable. The delegates turned, confused. A technician ran into the chamber, shouting in his native tongue, and handed the high speaker a data tablet. The feathered leader frowned, his expression shifting. There's been a breach in the outer docking sector, he said. Pirates, perhaps. Panic flickered through the audience. Council guards scrambled to secure exits, their plasma rifles humming to life. The human guards, however, did not move. Don't worry, Alan said calmly. We'll handle it. Handle it? Snapped a reptilian general. You're unarmed. Exactly, Alan replied, his tone still gentle. The aliens stared as the 6 human guards moved toward the main doors, their steps silent but synchronized, each movement precise. No one saw them draw weapons, because there were none. Yet as they reached the end of the corridor, the lights flickered again, and distant sounds echoed from the docking bay, shouts, gunfire, the crash of metal. The council screens flickered to life, showing security footage of the breach. Dozens of armed raiders had forced entry, their weapons blazing. But within seconds, the humans appeared on screen, moving fast, faster than any species in the chamber thought possible. One guard closed the distance to a gunman in a blur, his hand striking once, and the attacker dropped instantly. Another spun, deflecting a plasma bolt with a gesture that looked almost casual, the energy dispersing as if swallowed by air. The aliens in the chamber gasped, leaning forward, their disbelief turning to horror. Impossible, muttered a telepathic elder. No one moves like that. On screen, one of the raiders aimed a heavy cannon, but before he could fire, 2 human guards reached him, disarming and disabling the weapon in perfect tandem, their movements synchronized like dancers in a deadly rhythm. The footage froze as the pirates retreated, leaving behind only silence and smoke. Within minutes, the human guards re-entered the council chamber, uniforms unwrinkled, expressions calm. They took their positions again behind their ambassador, as if nothing had happened. The hall was silent. Even the high speaker said nothing. Finally, Alan spoke. You see now, he said quietly. We carry no weapons because we don't need them. What we carry can't be scanned, stolen, or disarmed. One alien whispered shakily, then, what do you carry? Alan looked up at the council, his voice steady. History. The word echoed like thunder. Every soldier who fought so others could speak freely, every life lost protecting the innocent. Their memory stays with us. It teaches us how to move, how to think, how to endure. That's our weapon, the weight of those who came before. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the telepaths among them stayed silent, because what they sensed in the humans was not rage or pride, but memory old and endless. The high speaker finally broke the silence. You channel your dead. We honor them, Alan said. They trained us long before we were born. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably, their laughter gone, replaced by an unease that words couldn't describe. Every human eye in that room seemed older than its years. Every movement felt deliberate, patient, powerful in its stillness. The aliens had come expecting primitive soldiers. They had found something else entirely. Perhaps, Alan said softly, you'll understand someday why we prefer peace. The high speaker, once proud and mocking, now lowered his gaze. And if peace fails? He asked quietly. Alan met his eyes without hesitation. Then you'll see why we don't carry weapons, he replied. The chamber fell utterly silent, and for the first time in the long history of the Galactic Council, no one dared to laugh at humanity again. The next day, the Galactic Council chambers buzzed louder than ever, filled with tension and pride disguised as laughter. The incident of the pirate attack had become the talk of every planet. Yet instead of gratitude, many species felt fear and envy. The images of unarmed humans moving like living storms disturbed them. No one understood how mere flesh could react faster than machines, how men without weapons could defeat raiders armed with plasma rifles. To ease their own unease, the council decided to act. High Speaker Varin called a meeting in full assembly, his wings folded tight against his back, eyes glowing with false authority. "Order!" he shouted, his voice echoing across the hall. Yesterday's event was concerning. We witnessed an armed attack during a diplomatic session, an embarrassment to this council's authority. While the humans responded swiftly, their methods were unorthodox and unacceptable for a peaceful forum. Therefore, a new rule shall be imposed. No species shall bring armed protection into council grounds, including humans. The declaration caused murmurs of shock and approval. Some delegates nodded eagerly, others exchanged uncertain glances. The humans stood at their designated corner, silent as ever, their faces calm. Commander Allen rose, his posture perfect, voice even. "We have no objection to the rule," he said quietly. "As you've seen, our guards do not carry weapons." "Yes," hissed the Kren delegate from the far end of the table. "And that is exactly the problem. You fight without them, which makes you unpredictable." Another alien, a tall serpent-like creature from the Yaren Dominion, raised his head and hissed mockingly. "Perhaps they use hidden tech, bio-enhancements, implants, forbidden psychic links. We should scan them all again." The hall erupted in agreement. Varin nodded, pleased by the growing tension. "Indeed. For the safety of this council, all human guards will undergo a complete biological scan and disarmament procedure. From this point forward, no hidden technology or enhancement may be carried within the council walls." Allen's gaze hardened slightly, but his voice stayed calm. "If that's your wish, we'll comply." Behind him, his guards didn't move or speak. Their silence was unnerving. It felt rehearsed, disciplined, almost military beyond measure. As the council adjourned, whispers filled the corridors. "They agreed too easily," muttered a Velka telepath. "It's almost like they don't care." "Maybe they know they can't win," replied another. But deep down, some remembered the frozen footage from the attack. The moment when a plasma shot had stopped mid-air, humming like a trapped thought. That image haunted them, though none dared to admit it. Later that evening, the human delegation was led through the scanning chambers. Machines hummed as golden light swept across their bodies, reading every nerve, every molecule. Alien technicians frowned as the results appeared on their displays. No weapons, no nanotech, no cybernetic cores. "Impossible," whispered one. "Their nervous systems, they're overdeveloped. The synapses fire too fast. It's like they're tuned." "Tuned to what?" asked another. The technician swallowed. "Each other." Commander Allen stood nearby, watching calmly as his people were inspected. "Do you always treat guests like criminals?" he asked softly. The lead technician, a small avian creature, stammered, "Protocol, for safety, Commander." Allen nodded slightly, no anger in his voice. "Safety," he repeated. "Yes, we understand that word better than most." When the scans ended, the council guards allowed the humans to pass, though none dared meet their eyes. As the group walked down the corridor, one of the alien officers whispered to another, "They are hiding something." The human at the rear, Captain Hale, turned his head slightly, as if he'd heard, and smiled faintly. "You're right," he said quietly. "We're hiding everything you can't measure." The officer froze, unsure whether it was a threat or a warning. The next morning, the new rule went into effect. The council made a grand announcement: all guards shall remain disarmed in the presence of peace. The hall applauded, pretending to believe in the illusion of control. But something about the humans' composure unsettled them. When the ambassadors of the Kethian Empire entered the chamber, they wore layers of armor and shimmering shields. The reptilian guards behind them carried pulse cannons glowing blue. Beside them, the humans stood, plain, silent, unarmed. The contrast was almost poetic. A Kethian general leaned forward, smirking. "Tell me, human," he sneered, "how do you protect your leaders with empty hands?" Captain Hale turned his gaze toward the alien, his voice calm. "We carry what others can't." The general laughed, showing his sharp fangs. "And what would that be?" "Words." Hale's eyes didn't waver. "Responsibility." The alien stopped laughing. He didn't know why, but something in the human's tone felt heavier than a weapon. "You speak boldly for one so fragile," the general hissed. "We've been called worse," Hale said simply. The meeting began, but unease lingered like smoke. Syrah, one of the Velka telepaths seated near the observation deck, tried to scan the human's surface thoughts. It was her nature to listen, to feel what minds carried. But when she reached toward them, her mind hit a wall, calm, silent, unyielding. No hostility, no fear, no open thought. Just focus. It was like trying to hear sound in a vacuum. She withdrew instantly, her tendrils trembling. One of her fellow telepaths asked, "What did you see?" "Nothing," she whispered. "That's what scares me." As the session went on, the council debated trade routes and treaties, but tension hummed under every word. The humans were polite, respectful, yet their stillness dominated the room. Whenever they shifted, even slightly, every alien eye followed. There was something about their presence that felt ancient, like they had stood in worse rooms, under worse lights, facing far greater threats. By the end of the meeting, the council believed they had asserted dominance. "Good," said Varin, spreading his wings proudly. "Now this chamber shall be a place of peace. No weapons, no violence, only unity." He looked at Alan, smiling. "Even you must agree this is better." Alan nodded once. "It is," he said. "Peace is always better. But remember, peace is only safe when everyone respects it." "And if someone doesn't?" asked the Skavari general mockingly. Then, Alan said softly, "We do what humans always do." "And what's that?" "We adapt." The aliens laughed again, trying to hide their unease. But Syrah, watching quietly from her seat, noticed something the others didn't. The faint shimmer in the humans' eyes, the steady rhythm in their breathing, the perfect harmony in their movements. They were disarmed, yes, but not unprepared. She felt it in her bones. They weren't soldiers. They were something else. Something the galaxy had never seen before. And when she closed her eyes that night, she could still hear the human commander's words echoing in her mind, "We carry what others can't." The day began like any other in the council citadel, with thousands of delegates arriving from every corner of the galaxy, their ships glittering like jewels against the black sky. The humans arrived last, as always, their plain silver shuttle landing quietly without escort or display. Inside the main hall, guards from a dozen species stood at attention, their armor gleaming, weapons humming with power. The humans, in contrast, stood unarmed at the far end of the chamber, still and silent like shadows carved from stone. For 2 weeks, the new weapon ban had been in place, and most species had begun to relax, believing themselves safe within the council's walls. But the humans did not relax. They never did. Captain Hale and his unit took their usual positions behind Ambassador Allen, scanning the room with calm eyes that missed nothing. Syrah, the Velka telepath, sat high above in the observer's tier, trying once again to read them, but as always, she felt only stillness. No surface thoughts, no flicker of emotion, nothing. It was like staring into the ocean and seeing only her own reflection. The meeting began with dull speeches about trade routes and peace accords, but tension crept in when a faint rumble shook the floor. At first, everyone thought it was a passing cargo vessel, but the vibration grew stronger. Lights flickered overhead. The automated security drones spun to life, scanning wildly, and then suddenly, all power died. The chamber fell into darkness. The sound of distant explosions echoed through the corridors, followed by screams and the sharp hum of plasma fire. The delegates panicked instantly, their voices overlapping in terror. "Attack! We're under attack! Seal the doors! Activate the shields!" But the shields didn't respond. The Council's command network had been disabled. Somewhere in the dark, a voice barked through a static-filled comm docking bay breached. Unknown ships inbound. Multiple life signs, heavily armed. The aliens froze in horror. None of them had brought weapons. None of them could fight. Then, through the smoke and flickering lights, the main doors exploded inward. A wave of mercenaries stormed in, armored in black, their rifles blazing, shouting in a language no one recognized. The air filled with light and death. Dozens of guards fell in the first few seconds. The delegates scattered, cowering behind the massive crystal pillars. A Skavari officer tried to raise a psychic barrier, but a plasma bolt pierced his chest before he could finish the chant. Panic ruled the room. And then, through the chaos, the humans moved. They did not shout. They did not panic. They simply stepped forward, forming a line in front of the council platform. Their movements smooth, synchronized, precise. "Stand down," shouted one of the alien officers, his voice trembling. "You're unarmed." Captain Hale ignored him. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "stay behind us." "Understood," Alan replied, his voice steady even as the floor shook. The mercenaries laughed when they saw the humans take position without weapons. "Look at them," one shouted. "No guns, no armor. Finish them." They fired, and the first bolt shot straight toward Hale's chest. But instead of impact, the energy dispersed in midair, vanishing in a faint shimmer. The attackers hesitated, confused. Hale raised his hand slowly, palm forward. The air around him rippled, distorting like heat above fire. A second shot came, and it too dissolved before reaching him. The mercenaries fired all at once, a storm of light, but every blast vanished, swallowed by something unseen. The humans began to walk forward. Each step was measured, deliberate, like soldiers marching in silence to a rhythm only they could hear. The nearest attacker screamed and charged, raising a blade glowing red. Hale caught his wrist mid-swing. There was a flash, not light, but force, and the mercenary flew backward, hitting the wall hard enough to crack the stone. The aliens watching were frozen in disbelief. One of the council guards whispered, "They're not using tech, they're using themselves." Another human spun, catching a second attacker by the throat. No weapon, no strike, just a movement too fast to see, and the enemy dropped lifeless. Each human guard moved differently but perfectly in tune, their breathing synchronized, their focus absolute. To the terrified aliens, it looked like a dance, slow and graceful but unstoppable. The mercenaries began to fall one by one, their weapons flickering uselessly in their hands. One of them screamed, "They're absorbing our energy." But by then it was too late. Within minutes, the chamber was silent again except for the faint hum of returning power. Smoke curled through the air, mingled with the scent of scorched metal. Bodies lay scattered across the marble floor. The humans stood in formation, uninjured, uniforms barely marked. Captain Hale looked around, assessing the room as if he had just finished a training exercise. "Clear," he said simply. Ambassador Allen stepped forward, helping an alien delegate to her feet. The High Speaker, trembling behind his throne, stared at them in horror. What are you?" he whispered. Hale's gaze met his, calm but cold. "We're human," he said softly. "You call it impossible. We call it training." The High Speaker struggled to speak. What you did, it was not training. No species moves like that." Allen placed a hand on the railing. "You asked us to disarm," he said. "We obeyed. But protection isn't always metal or plasma. Sometimes it's memory, discipline, and will. You can ban our weapons, but you can't ban what we are." Around the chamber, the survivors watched in silence, hearts pounding. Syrah, still shaking, finally understood the wall she could never pass in their minds. It wasn't emptiness. It was focus so deep it became armor. They didn't carry technology. They carried purpose, forged in every human generation that had ever fought and survived. As emergency lights flickered back to life, the human guards reformed their line, watching the doors for any sign of a second wave. "They'll come again," Hale said quietly. "They always do." Allen nodded. "Then we'll do what we've always done." Syrah found her voice at last. "And what is that?" The human ambassador looked at her, eyes tired but fierce. End it. The words hung heavy in the smoky air, and the council chamber, once a place of arrogance and laughter, fell utterly silent. Every alien there knew, in that moment, that the human's true power was not in weapons or armor, but in the unbreakable will that no rule, no law, and no enemy could ever destroy. The attack had ended, but the echoes of chaos still clung to the council chamber like smoke after a storm. The smell of scorched metal hung in the air, and the floor bore deep cracks where the plasma fire had struck. Alien healers rushed between the wounded, their glowing hands trembling as they worked, while others stared at the human guards who stood silently in the center of it all. Not one of them was bleeding. Not one had fallen. The galaxy's most advanced weapons had failed against 6 unarmed humans. It was supposed to be impossible, and yet they stood there, calm, steady, and unshaken. Captain Hale's breathing was even, his uniform unwrinkled. His guards flanked him, motionless but alert, their eyes scanning every doorway. The alien delegates, still trembling, couldn't take their eyes off them. One of the Velka telepaths whispered in fear. They weren't fighting with muscles. I could feel it. They moved with their minds. The High Speaker turned toward the humans, his golden feathers dull and singed from the explosion. Explain yourselves, he demanded, his voice cracking with fear and pride. What are you? What kind of energy do you wield? Hale didn't answer. He simply turned toward Ambassador Allen, who stepped forward slowly, his face calm but his tone like stone. We told you, Allen said. We don't need weapons. The hall erupted with voices, accusations, panic, awe. It's unnatural, cried a reptilian delegate. You broke the laws of physics, shouted another. They are a threat. The words bounced across the chamber like thunder, but the humans didn't move. Syrah, still sitting near the observation deck, stared down at them, her tendrils twitching as she tried again to read their thoughts. What she felt this time wasn't silence, it was pressure. A deep pulse, slow and heavy, like the rhythm of a great heartbeat. When she tried to reach closer, the pulse grew louder until it drowned out her senses. Her vision blurred, and she gasped, clutching her chest. Her mind wasn't touching 6 people anymore, it was touching millions. She saw flashes, memories overlapping like storms. Humans standing in trenches under fire, running through rain and mud, holding the line when everything around them burned. She saw old wars, old planets, old sacrifices. They were all there, alive inside these 6 men and women. Syrah tore herself away from the link, falling to her knees, trembling. You're not 6, she whispered, her voice hoarse. You're thousands, millions. Allen turned his head toward her, his expression unreadable. We carry our history with us, he said softly. Every soldier, every protector, every person who gave their life so we could stand here today. They're not gone. They live through us. That's impossible, said the High Speaker, voice shaking. Memory doesn't grant power. Hale finally spoke, his tone quiet but sharp. No, but it grants purpose. And purpose is something no weapon can destroy. One of the alien generals shouted angrily. Lies? You're using forbidden technology, psionic weapons, human mind-link devices. Hale's lips curved into the faintest smile. You think technology can make men like us? No machine can teach courage. He stepped closer to the council floor, his boots echoing through the silence. Every guard here was trained the same way. We fight without weapons so we never forget what we're fighting for. Another delegate hissed. And what is that? Hale looked at him calmly. Each other. The chamber went still. No one spoke. Even the injured paused to listen. The humans didn't stand like soldiers. They stood like a single organism, perfectly in sync. Every breath they took came at the same rhythm, their heartbeats almost audible through the psychic air. Syrah realized it wasn't just discipline. It was connection. They didn't think as individuals but as one, bound by shared experience, by shared pain. And beneath it all, there was something deeper, something she couldn't name. She dared to whisper, "What's inside you?" Hale looked up toward her balcony. "Humanity," he said simply. every piece of it. As if in response, the lights in the hall flickered, though no system had been touched. The air shimmered faintly around the humans, not from heat or energy, but from sheer will. Their presence bent the space around them in subtle, invisible ways: pressure, gravity, emotion, all woven into one. The aliens could feel it pressing against their chests. Some fell to their knees without knowing why. "Stop," gasped the high speaker. "You'll destroy the hall." Alan raised his hand slightly, and at once, the pressure vanished. The human's aura faded, and everything returned to stillness. "You misunderstand," he said. "We don't use power to destroy. We use it to remind the galaxy what strength really is." The speaker stared at him in disbelief. "You claim to be peaceful, yet you could kill us all." Alan's tone softened. "Peace is not weakness. We learned long ago that to protect it, you must be strong enough to choose it. That's what our guards carry, not weapons, not hatred, but the memory of every time peace was worth dying for." Syrah's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she understood what she had sensed in them. It wasn't violence, it was love, pure and burning, carved into every cell of their being. Love for those who came before, for those who would come after, for the fragile beauty of peace that only the scarred truly valued. The aliens, who had mocked them only hours ago, now sat silent, ashamed, unable to look these unarmed humans in the eye. Hale turned to the council leader. "You banned weapons," he said. "But you can't ban what we've become. Every human carries their own weapon: discipline, duty, and the will to act when others hesitate. That's why we don't need guns." The high speaker lowered his gaze. "Perhaps," he whispered, "we made a mistake in mocking you." Alan gave a small, tired smile. "You made the mistake every new species makes," he said. "You confused peace with safety. They're not the same." Syrah stood weakly, clutching the railing as she looked down at him. "You can't carry the weight of so many souls forever," she said softly. "It will crush you." Alan met her eyes. "It already has," he said. "That's why we stand together, so it doesn't crush one of us alone." The chamber fell silent again, heavy with awe. The aliens looked at the humans not as curiosities now, but as something beyond understanding. They had thought humanity's silence was weakness, their restraint foolish, but now they saw it for what it truly was: control born from pain, calm born from chaos, peace built atop the ashes of endless war. And as the council recessed for the night, every delegate left the chamber slower, quieter, and for the first time, afraid of what it truly meant to face a species that no longer needed weapons to fight. The council chamber was rebuilt in silence the next morning. Workers swept away the broken glass and melted metal, yet even after the repairs, the air inside still felt heavier than before. It wasn't the damage that haunted the aliens, it was the humans. The unarmed guards had changed something deeper than walls or laws. They had changed the way every being in the galaxy saw them. No one laughed anymore when the humans entered. No one mocked their plain uniforms or their quiet eyes. They were no longer seen as guests. They were reminders of something older, something the galaxy had forgotten. True power didn't need to shout. As the council gathered again, the high speaker tried to sound in control. His voice echoed through the hall, too sharp to hide the tremor beneath. "Yesterday's incident has raised many questions. The council demands a full explanation for the events that occurred. You claim to have fought without weapons, yet what we saw defies every natural law." He turned toward Ambassador Alan, feathers ruffling nervously. "You will tell us what you carry." Alan remained calm, his hands clasped behind his back. "You already know what we carry," he said softly. "You just refuse to believe it." "Don't play games," barked a Kethian general, slamming his clawed hand against the table. "You moved faster than light itself. You crushed armored soldiers with bare hands. That's not memory, that's power." The human guards didn't flinch. Their stillness seemed to make the noise around them feel louder. Hale finally stepped forward, voice calm but sharp as glass. "Power," he said. "You think what you saw was power?" His gaze swept the room, making every delegate shift uncomfortably. "Power is easy. Power kills without reason. What we used was control. The room fell silent. Syrah, seated among the Velka observers, leaned forward slightly, her eyes glowing faintly as she listened. Hale continued. You think we broke your laws of physics. We didn't. We just learned how to use what's already there. Explain yourself, demanded the High Speaker, though his tone was weaker now. Hale's voice was calm, but each word carried the weight of stone. Every being fears death. Every soldier hesitates before it. Humans don't. Not because we are fearless, but because we've made peace with fear itself. Our minds learned to turn it into motion, instinct, reaction. We trained until fear became focus. You think our hands are empty, but everything we are, everything we've survived, lives in those hands. A murmur spread through the hall, low and uneasy. A reptilian scientist stood, his scales reflecting the chamber lights. You're saying, your strength comes from emotion. From experience, Hale corrected. Our ancestors fought monsters, machines, extinction itself. Every time we survived, the lessons stayed in our blood. We remember how to fight. We remember how to win. Even when everything says we shouldn't. The Velka telepaths looked at one another nervously. They could feel it now, the quiet hum in the humans' minds, like a storm far away but always approaching. One of them whispered, they're linked. Each one of them carries not just their own mind but echoes of others. The High Speaker turned sharply. Linked how? Syrah spoke softly before anyone else could answer. They carry resonance, she said. Not telepathy, something older. It's not connection through thought. It's connection through memory. All eyes turned to her. She rose slowly, looking at the humans below. When I touched them, she continued, I felt more than their emotions. I felt other lives, other centuries. I saw soldiers, explorers, children, all inside them. It's like they remember every life ever lived before them. The room was silent. Hale met her gaze. Now you understand, he said quietly. Our guards don't just protect the living, they carry the dead with them. Every lesson ever learned, every sacrifice ever made, is written into who we are. The Kethian general hissed in disbelief. That's not evolution, it's madness. Maybe, Hale said softly, but it's our kind of madness. Alan stepped forward, his tone calm, his words deliberate. You call us dangerous because we fight without weapons. But weapons can be stolen, broken, lost. What we carry cannot. You can't scan it, you can't confiscate it, and you can't stop it. It's not something we wear, it's something we've become. The chamber filled with a tense silence again, heavier than before. Even the sound of breathing felt loud. The High Speaker slumped slightly in his seat. So that's it, he muttered. You turned yourselves into living weapons. No, Alan said gently. We turned ourselves into living memories. Weapons kill. We remember why not to. Syrah stared at him, her eyes wide. But when you fought the raiders, she said, I felt something else, something deeper. It wasn't just defense. It was something watching through you. Hale's expression darkened, and for the first time, a flicker of something unreadable passed between the human guards. That's not something we talk about, he said. Syrah pressed quietly. It's not human, is it? It is, Hale replied softly. It's the part of us that never sleeps. The part that wakes when we're threatened. Call it instinct. Call it history. Call it what you want. But it's ours. The High Speaker looked between them, disbelief and fear fighting for control in his voice. You mean to tell us that your minds hold the memories of your dead? That they live inside you? No, Alan said. They don't live in us. We live because of them. The words hung in the air like a quiet explosion. No one could speak. The humans didn't look proud or angry. They looked solemn, as if bearing a truth too heavy for words. Syrah felt her chest tighten. She had always thought her telepathic kind understood the mind better than any species alive. But now, as she stared at the humans, she realized they didn't understand the mind at all. The humans weren't creatures of thought. They were creatures of memory, and memory was stronger than thought, older than time itself. Hale turned back toward the council. "You feared our weapons," he said. "You should have feared our reasons." He motioned to his guards, and they began to leave the chamber in perfect silence, their footsteps echoing in rhythm like a heartbeat. Every alien's gaze followed them, each step reminding them that these beings, so calm, so quiet, carried something greater than any army. As the doors closed behind them, the High Speaker finally spoke again, his voice barely more than a whisper. "They said they didn't need weapons," he murmured. "Now I understand why. They are weapons. And God help the galaxy if they ever decide to use themselves." Days passed after the humans left the council chamber, but their presence never truly faded. The alien delegates found themselves speaking softer, walking slower, and glancing at every shadow as if expecting to see one of those calm, unarmed figures standing there again. The galaxy's most powerful leaders had seen something they couldn't explain, and fear of the unknown had begun to spread faster than any virus. News channels across systems played the same footage over and over, the humans standing motionless under gunfire, their eyes unblinking as energy bolts dissolved before them. The footage always ended the same way, with silence. No music, no narration, just the sound of a single human breath. Some called them divine, others called them monsters. On the outer colonies, soldiers whispered a new nickname for them: the Echoes. The name came from what one telepath had said. Humans carried echoes of the past inside them, living memories of every battle, every death, every victory. The Galactic Council tried to bury the truth, but the universe had already seen too much. Fear turned to curiosity, curiosity to paranoia. Rumors spread that humans had developed a way to harness consciousness itself, to bind the souls of their dead into the living. Every race wanted the secret. The Velka telepaths were the first to act. Syrah was summoned to her homeworld, where the Velka High Circle questioned her for days. The glowing chamber where she stood was lined with psionic amplifiers that made her feel as though her thoughts were being pulled apart strand by strand. "Tell us again what you saw," demanded the first speaker of Velka, his voice echoing through the mind link. "You said you felt more than emotion." Syrah's voice trembled. "Yes, I felt them. The humans weren't alone inside their minds. When I touched them, I felt others, hundreds, maybe thousands. They were connected, but not like we are. Their link wasn't made of thought. It was made of memory." The circle murmured among themselves. "You mean the dead?" one of them asked. "No," Syrah said softly. "Not the dead. The living who remember the dead. It's like every loss, every war, every pain they've ever suffered, became part of them. They don't run from it. They live with it." "And that gives them power?" asked another. "It gives them unity," she replied. "Their fear, their grief, their love. They move together because they've learned to share pain without losing themselves. They aren't using magic or psionics. They're using something far older. Something every being in the galaxy forgot." The circle was silent. "And what is that?" asked the first speaker. Syrah looked down, her voice shaking. "Human will." Across the galaxy, other powers weren't as thoughtful. The Kethian Empire sent spies to Earth, the Skavari Syndicate dispatched fleets to intercept human vessels, and even the Council itself began secret research, trying to decode what made the humans different. But every attempt failed. Every scan, every probe, every analysis came back the same. Nothing special. No implants, no genetic engineering, no psychic signatures. The more they searched, the more the mystery grew. Until one day, a distress signal arrived from the Outer Rim. A mining station under Council protection had been attacked by an unknown enemy. The broadcast came through fragmented, static, screams, flashes of strange ships with dark hulls and silent weapons. The Galactic Council scrambled, deploying ships and fleets. But the humans were already there. When the Council fleet arrived, they found the battle over. The enemy ships floated dead in space, their hulls frozen, their weapons turned inward, as if they had fired upon themselves. The mining station was intact, its crew alive. A single human cruiser, the Soul's Mercy, hung in orbit, its weapons offline. When the Council demanded an explanation, they received only a single message from Captain Hale himself: "They came for us." They left with themselves. The words made no sense to anyone, but the telepaths who read the transmission felt a chill they couldn't explain. The Council summoned the humans once more. This time, the chamber was full to the edges with armed guards, an irony lost on no one. Ambassador Allen and his team entered as calmly as before. No weapons, no armor, just silence. The High Speaker leaned forward. "What happened at the mining station?" he demanded. Allen looked around the hall, his eyes cold. "You mean what you're afraid happened," he said quietly. "The enemy tried to use our dead against us. They thought memories could be controlled. They were wrong." "Explain," snapped a Scavari officer. Hale stepped forward, his voice level. "They used a thought weapon, a psionic field meant to make us relive our worst fears. They thought it would break us. Instead, it reminded us who we are." He looked directly at the High Speaker. "You see, every human carries their own battlefield. Our minds aren't peaceful. We live with ghosts, with regrets, with pain. We've just learned to keep walking anyway. You can't break what's already broken, and learned to rebuild." The chamber fell silent. Syrah watched from the shadows, tears in her eyes. For the first time, she understood what she had seen that day when she collapsed after touching them. Humans didn't fight despite their scars. They fought because of them. Their strength came from the one thing every other species tried to erase: pain. And somehow, that made them unstoppable. The High Speaker sank back into his chair, feathers trembling. "You carry ghosts," he whispered. "And they fight with you." Allen nodded once. "They remind us what happens if we lose." No one spoke for a long time. The humans turned to leave, their steps echoing like heartbeats in the vast hall. Syrah watched them disappear through the door, feeling something she couldn't name. It wasn't fear anymore. It was respect mixed with something close to awe. She whispered to herself, maybe the universe didn't create humans to conquer. Maybe it created them to remember. But as she said it, far beyond the Council's reach, an old enemy stirred in the dark corners of space. One that had met humans once before and lost everything. They, too, remembered. And this time, they were coming back, determined to see what truly lived inside the minds of humanity. The message arrived without warning, traveling through every relay station, every network, every secure channel in the galaxy at once. No one could trace it. No one could block it. It carried no signature, no origin, only 6 words written in the ancient trade tongue. "We remember the War of Ashes." The words alone sent a shock through the Council. That war was never supposed to be spoken of again, not after what it had cost the galaxy centuries ago. The War of Ashes had erased entire species, burned whole worlds into silence. The records said it ended when the unknown enemy vanished, leaving behind nothing but dead systems and burned skies. But now they were back. The High Speaker called an emergency meeting, and for the first time in history, the Council sent word to Earth begging for assistance. Within days, a single human fleet arrived, 12 ships, dark and silent, bearing no emblems except one. A circle of light carved into steel, the old insignia of the Terran Memory Corps. The Council expected armies, weapons, fleets of thousands. Instead, the humans sent 12 ships and 50 crew members. "That can't be all of them," hissed the Kethian general as the fleet descended into orbit. "This is arrogance." But when the first human stepped off the ramp, silence fell. It was Captain Hale. His uniform was darker now, his eyes older. Beside him walked Ambassador Allen, his face unreadable. The Council guards raised their weapons instinctively, but something in the air made them lower them again. The humans didn't speak at first. They just looked around, as if listening to something unseen. Finally, Allen broke the silence. "They are back," he said softly. "The ones you call the forgotten. But to us, they were never forgotten." The High Speaker's voice shook. "You fought them before." Allen nodded slowly. "We were the last to fight them, and the only ones to survive." Hale stepped forward. They don't come for planets or resources. They come for memory. They consume history itself. Every species they destroy, every trace of who they were, vanishes. They eat remembrance until even grief is gone. The aliens looked horrified. That's impossible, whispered Syrah from her seat among the Velka. You can't erase memory. Hale turned to her, eyes calm. You can when you make the universe forget. The council erupted in confusion. The High Speaker demanded answers, pounding his clawed hands against the table. How did you survive them, then? Alan's expression hardened. Because humans never forget. We carry our dead inside us, and no one, not gods, not monsters, can take that from us. Syrah's heart pounded. The air in the chamber felt heavy again, the same silent hum she had felt the first time she met them. But this time it was stronger, deeper, resonating through the floor, the walls, the very bones of the building. They are close, Hale said quietly. We can feel them moving through the edges of the dark. They feed on silence, on worlds that stop remembering. That's why you never saw them coming. The High Speaker stood, feathers bristling. Then we will fight them with everything we have. Hale looked at him steadily. You already did. Last time. And you lost. The room froze. You think your weapons will work on something that doesn't exist in the present. Hale continued. They move through time like it's water. When you remember them, they find you. When you forget, they erase you completely. Syrah swallowed, her voice trembling. Then why haven't they erased you? Hale's voice softened, almost like a whisper. Because we don't just remember, we remember together. We pass it forward, generation after generation. They can't kill what lives in all of us. The High Speaker collapsed back into his seat, eyes wide. Then what do we do? Alan's expression was grim. You don't fight them with ships or guns. You fight them by refusing to forget. Every world, every mind must hold the same truth. Every being must remember who they are, or you will vanish like the ones before you. The chamber filled with whispers. The idea seemed insane. Fight with memory? Yet the humans stood there, completely certain, completely calm. We'll lead the defense, Hale said, but understand this, we're not fighting for survival. We're fighting for existence. Syrah looked at them, tears gathering in her eyes. And if you lose? She asked quietly. Hale smiled faintly. Then at least the universe will remember we tried. Outside the council hall, the stars dimmed one by one as the dark horizon moved closer. It wasn't a fleet that came. It was an emptiness, a silence spreading across space. Entire constellations flickered and went dark as though swallowed by shadow. And somewhere inside that darkness, something vast was watching. Hale turned toward the viewport, his reflection merging with the fading stars. They think they can make the galaxy forget humanity, he said softly. But they don't understand. Humanity was born in darkness, and we learned to light fires that never die. The others stood beside him, silent and ready, as the first whispers of the forgotten touched the edges of known space. And for the first time since the galaxy's birth, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see if memory was enough to fight oblivion. The darkness reached the edge of known space like a tide made of silence, swallowing stars, devouring signals, erasing every trace of life it touched. One by one, colonies went dark without screams, without explosions, just sudden absence. Whole civilizations vanished not in death but in forgetting, as though they had never existed. The Galactic Council watched helplessly as their maps began to fade, sectors disappearing like ink dissolving in water. The only ones who didn't panic were the humans. They stood aboard the flagship Soul's Mercy, orbiting the last defense line between the Council worlds and the spreading void. Inside the command deck, Captain Hale stared through the wide viewport, eyes reflecting the faint light of the dying stars. They are close, he said softly. Ambassador Alan stood beside him, calm but grave. And they remember us, he replied. The crew moved in silence, their faces steady, their voices low. There were no battle orders, no weapon checks. They weren't preparing for a fight in the way the aliens understood it. They were preparing for remembrance. The rest of the council fleet hovered nearby, thousands of ships armed with plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and antimatter shields, but none of it would matter. They didn't even know what they were facing. Syrah, the Velka telepath, had joined the human ship as an observer. She stood near the humans, her tendrils trembling as she sensed the incoming presence. It wasn't like anything she had ever felt before. It wasn't thought or energy, it was absence. It was like her mind was being slowly erased. "It's feeding on me," she gasped. Hale looked at her and said quietly, "Don't fight it. Remember something. Anything." "What?" she asked desperately. "A sound," he said. "A smell. A moment. Hold it." She closed her eyes and remembered the sound of rain falling on her homeworld's crystal leaves, the scent of warm soil after the storm. The feeling anchored her, and the erasing stopped. "That's how it works," Hale said. "As long as you remember who you are, they can't take you." The ship's sensors began to fail one by one. The lights dimmed. The stars outside blinked out, leaving only a faint glow ahead, the approaching void. The council fleet opened fire, but every blast disappeared into the silence without a sound. The alien commanders screamed over comms, their voices breaking as their ships flickered out of existence. Then the darkness reached Sol's mercy. The lights went out completely. The hum of the engines died. For a moment, it felt like the universe had ended. But inside that blackness, the humans began to hum. It started low, almost like a vibration. Then another joined. Then another. Soon the entire crew was humming the same tone. A sound that wasn't quite music, but something older, ancient, raw, alive. Syrah felt it before she heard it in her mind. Each note carried a memory, a child's laughter, a soldier's promise, a mother's heartbeat, a dying man's last breath. The sound built like waves crashing against the walls of the void. The darkness trembled. "What are they doing?" Syrah whispered. "They're remembering out loud," Alan said softly. "The first humans used songs to remember who they were before they could even write. Now we do the same." Outside the ship, the void began to twist, the silence breaking apart as light returned in fragments. The human hum grew stronger, turning into words, ancient ones. "We are the flame that endures," Hale whispered. "We are the echo that cannot die." The ship's core flared, not with energy but with something else, resonance. Every human on board was connected through it, every heartbeat perfectly in sync. Syrah felt herself pulled into their rhythm, her mind joining theirs. She saw visions, Earth burning and rebuilding, oceans rising, stars being born, humanity crawling from dirt to space, never stopping. Every fall, every rise, every loss, it was all there. The darkness screamed, not with sound but through feeling, an endless rage of nothingness trying to crush everything that was real. But the humans didn't stop. Their hum became a roar, a storm of memory tearing through the void. And then, from the surface of Earth itself, millions of human minds joined the chorus. Soldiers, workers, children, the old, the broken, all remembering, all connecting. Across every colony, every station, every ship, humanity remembered together. The void faltered. It cracked like glass under pressure, the nothingness folding in on itself, devouring its own silence. "They can't win," Syrah gasped. "They can't consume what refuses to forget." "Exactly," Alan said. "They erase what's forgotten. But we are the story that keeps rewriting itself." The void collapsed in a blinding burst of light. For a moment, it looked like a sunrise stretched across the entire galaxy. And then, just as suddenly, it was gone. The stars returned. The council ships floated in stunned silence. Syrah fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. You fought the end of existence with memory," she whispered. Hale nodded slowly. "That's all humanity ever had," he said. "When everything else burns, we remember. And remembering is enough." The council's leaders contacted them, begging for answers, for explanations, for understanding, but the humans gave none. They simply said, "It's over. For now." When Syrah looked into Hale's eyes one last time, she realized they carried the weight of every human who had ever lived and died. "You've won," she said softly. Hale gave a faint smile. "No," he said. "We survived. There's a difference." As the soul's mercy turned toward the stars, Syrah felt something she hadn't in years: hope. The galaxy would never forget this day, not because of the battle, but because humanity had taught them something greater than survival. That day became known as the War for Memory. And from that moment on, every species in the galaxy built monuments not to their victories, but to their stories, their histories, their memories. For they had learned from the humans that the only true weapon against darkness was not light, but the courage to remember when the universe wanted you to forget.